Exactly who are the LA Kings? We'll try to answer that on this edition of Locked on LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked on LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked on LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We're also available on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked on LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. Coming up on today's show, we're going to preview tonight's Kings Predators game in Nashville, update you on the Pacific Division standings heading into a new week, and give you a rain report. But first, the Kings played game number 12 of the NHL season this past Saturday afternoon against the Chicago Blackhawks. We're going to recap that game and get you ready for today's game against Nashville. But we start with the Saturday game and the Kings lineup against Chicago. Not a surprise, would be the exact same lineup we have seen or what did see in the Kings' big win over the Vegas Golden Knights 6-3. So again, no changes when you play your best game of the year. That makes sense. Andrei Kopitar centering the top line with Adrian Kempe and Alex Turcotte. Second line, Philip Deneau centering Trevor Moore and Kevin Fiala. The third line, Quentin Byfield centering Alex Laferriere and Warren Foegele. And the fourth line, Trevor Moore centering Tanner Jeannot and Akil Thomas. The defensive pairings also the same. Top pairing of Mikey Anderson and Vladislav Gavrikov. Joel Edmondson and Brandt Clark on the second pairing, and Andreas Englund and Jordan Spence are the third pairing. The goaltender was Darcy Kemper, and he would be backed up by David Riddick. Your scratches were Andre Lee, Kyle Burrows, and Caleb Jones. My big question going into the game against Chicago was, would the Kings build off their best game of the year, that 6-3 win over Vegas on Wednesday? Well, as for the game summary in this one, things started off well for the Kings, scoring a power play goal in the first period. Alex Laferriere scoring his team-leading 7th of the season, and the Kings held a 1-0 lead after one. Second period, not on the power play, but again, Alex Laferriere would strike with his 8th of the season. Kings were up 2-0 after two. However, in the third period, the Kings would allow a pair of goals 2 minutes apart. Suddenly, they found themselves tied at 2-2. Philip Deneau, though, would get his first of the season for the Kings, and they grabbed a 3-2 lead and held on to that lead into the final seconds when Chicago would pull their goalie for the extra attacker, and they would end up tying up the game, scoring on a goal, 31 seconds left before the Kings skated off with the 2-point victory. We'd be tied at 3-3. A scoreless overtime period then saw the game be decided in a shootout, which Chicago won 4-3. So the Blackhawks get the victory. Again, 4-3 the final. Shots on goal heavily favored the Kings, 40-21. Power play, the Kings were 1 for 3 while Chicago was 0 for 2. Faceoffs heavily favored the Kings, 36-19. Hits narrowly favored Chicago, 25-24, and block shots favored the Blackhawks, 17-13. So you get a little bit of a glimpse of what the game was like if you didn't see it. It was mostly, I don't want to say dominated, but the Kings were the better team in this one, but they don't come out with the victory. So what was my big takeaway from the game? Well, right now, I don't know what to expect from the LA Kings. I don't. They have this pattern of losing to bad teams now. 2 of the last 3 games they played were at the time against the worst team in the NHL. It was the Sharks. And then 2 days later or 2 games later, it was the Blackhawks, and they lose to both of them. Now, in between was their best game of the year, the win over Vegas. So right now, it's really difficult to get a read on who the LA Kings are. Now, what did the coach say? Quote the coach, Jim Hiller, after the latest game against Chicago, said, quote, "It's a hard league. You have to play well to win. And if you don't, you put yourself in the danger zone," end quote. Well, I would agree that if you let any team hang around, you put yourself in the danger zone. But good teams also put away bad teams especially at home. They don't put themselves in a position to have those bad teams be able to get a goal at the end. And next thing you know, now you're in trouble or you're in a position where next goal wins. So what was good for the Kings from a team standpoint in this game? We'll talk more about the individuals in this game coming up, but this wasn't the worst game the LA Kings played this year. Matter of fact, they were clearly the better team to me. They were the better team in the first and second periods for sure, and they dominated the overtime, but they weren't the best team in the third period. They let Chicago get back into it, and then after not being able to get a goal in the overtime, they let it go to a shootout where they end up losing. The Kings were the better team on special teams, which is always a big thing for the Kings. They got off to a decent start in this one, scored the first goal, a power play goal, which the Kings have struggled on the power play this year, and they made it actually look very easy on the power play and scored almost immediately. It wasn't like the Kings were awful in this game, which makes it a little bit tougher to swallow. But again, they let the Blackhawks hang around. They got a couple of goals in the third period. Suddenly a bad team is hungry and excited about what's going on. And it's a game in the third period. And again, better teams don't allow that to happen. The Kings weren't terrible in this game, but obviously they weren't good enough. I wouldn't say I'm upset overall with the Kings' effort and execution for the most part in this game. But again, what matters is getting 2 points. Certainly you think more often than not, if you're playing the right way, you're going to get the 2 points. Kings let the Blackhawks off the mat and end up only getting one out of a possible 2 points. So what was not good for the LA Kings from a team standpoint? Again, obviously you let one of the worst teams in the league beat you on home ice in a game where you were the better team throughout most of it. Again, good teams find a way to close out games against bad competition. The Kings never let it should have gotten to a point where it even went overtime. Then in the overtime, though, you are the better team. You're the dominant team, and you're not able to close it out. And now the Kings continue to struggle in games that go beyond regulation. So far on the season, they're 0-3 in games that go beyond regulation. They've lost 2 overtime games, and now they've lost a game in a shootout. Coming up next, we're going to look at some individual players for the Kings against the Blackhawks who played a good game, who didn't play such a good game. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less based on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Just go to the PrizePick app, make your picks right now, and you could be a winner. And you can also win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action as far as fantasy sports in most states. It includes California. Download the PrizePick app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's the code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And no matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Indeed partners you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. And you can also invite applicants to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, let's get into some of the individual players for the LA Kings in their latest game against the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll start with the goaltender, and that was Darcy Kemper. And I've said that overall, I've liked a lot of what Darcy Kemper has done this year. In this game, he certainly wasn't bad. I wouldn't point the finger at him as to why the Kings lost. I thought one of the 3 goals that he allowed in regulation were definitely on him. And I will have to admit, he did not look good in the shootout at all. But we'll start with the first goal that he allowed. It did come from a shot from distance. He made the initial save, but the puck squirted behind him, and in his scramble to try and cover the puck, he actually knocked the puck into the net with his glove. Now, it didn't help things that both Joel Edmondson and Brant Clark, the 2 defenders on the ice, let the player who shot the puck, Chicago captain Nick Foligno, go right between them and to the net to put pressure on Kemper, which caused him to kind of scramble around. Still, that was one that Kemper needed to do a better job on. The second goal allowed was a one-time shot on a rush. That's a tough shot to stop. Quick release with the player on the move. So I don't put that one in as a soft goal. Third goal was a pass through the top of the crease to a player at the back door for a tap-in. That was the game-tying goal. Vladislav Gavrikov and Mikey Anderson were on the ice, so your 2 top defenders were on the ice in that situation, as they should be. Gavrikov was in position. His stick was on the ice, and he just wasn't anticipating the pass, apparently, because he just missed it. He cannot let that pass go through. Darcy Kemper has no chance on the back door to make that save, so not being helped out, obviously, by his defenders on that one. As I said, though, Darcy Kemper in the shootout, all 3 Chicago shooters scored, including the game winner, which was one where Kemper was pretty much deked out of his skates. He went for a poke check in desperation, didn't make it, and the Chicago player basically put it into an empty net. So I will say that Darcy Kemper definitely didn't look comfortable in the shootout at all. Overall, I thought, though, in the game, I thought he had played good enough to get the win, but unfortunately doesn't get the win in this one. Alex Laverriere continues to be absolutely on fire. The first goal that he scored was an easy tap in on the power play. Really credit Andrei Kopitar with doing the heavy lifting on that one. Kopitar gets the puck at the side of the net. The defense doesn't go to him, so he goes to the net. He's got the option of shooting or passing. He decides to pass it over to Laverriere, who just taps it in. But right place, right time for Alex Laverriere. Again, talked about it going into the season. He needed to be a bigger presence around the net, and he's definitely done that, and more so this year. The second goal for Laverriere, nice wrist shot from the left faceoff dot, beats the goalie cleanly. I've been saying it now for a couple of shows. Alex Laverriere looks like he could be a legitimate 30-goal scorer this year. He's got 8 goals in 12 games. Now I think I might actually be disappointed if he doesn't get to 30 goals and more. 82 games last season, Alex Laverriere had 12 goals. Again, in 12 games, he's got 8 so far this year. So he's obviously red hot. He's actually tied for 3rd in the NHL in goals with those 8 goals. Now, granted, there are 8 other players in front of him that are also tied for the lead and first and second place in goal scoring, but still, right now he has, I think it's 7 even strength goals. And the only other player in the league that's got more with 8 is Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's a guy who's won an MVP and is likely going to be in consideration for the Hart Trophy once again this year. So Alex Laverriere off to an amazing start. He's in some good company right now. Can he keep this up? Obviously, it'd be very curious to see. But again, 8 goals in 12 games, unless he just completely hits a wall or everything right now is just all luck for him, which I don't think it is, be pretty surprised if he does not reach the 30-goal mark, and nobody could have predicted that going into this season. So, like I said, big surprise. I thought Alex Laverriere would, and again, going into the season, he was projected to be on the top line, and he has been playing on the number 1 power play unit, and he got a power play goal in this game. But I thought based on that alone, based on the opportunities he was going to have, that he could get 20 goals. And I was saying that would be great. But again, the way it's going now, 30 plus seems to be a real possibility for Alex Laverriere, but we shall see. Kevin Fiala, I thought this was his best game of the season. He had 2 assists in the loss to Chicago, but he was very active the entire game. He looked dangerous with the puck on his stick. He was drawing defenders to him. Thought he moved the puck very well on the power play. this is the type of game that I expect from Kevin Fiala more often than not. He hadn't had this type of game really leading up to this one. Was certainly better in the Vegas game, but I thought this was the Kevin Fiala that we're used to seeing. So hopefully this is kind of a jumping off point for him, and we see a lot more of this going forward. Want to mention Philip Deneau, probably his best game of the year with a goal, his first goal of the season. Also had an assist, 5 shots on goal, was second only to Adrian Kempe in this game. So Philippe was looking for a shot in this one. Now he does a lot of unsung things that don't necessarily show up on the score sheet. That makes him a valuable player, but nice to see Philip Deneau contributing on the score sheet as well. And got to continue to talk about Quentin Byfield and Trevor Moore from a negative standpoint. Not that they aren't playing hard, not that they aren't doing some other things, but the production obviously hasn't been there from either player. We're still waiting for either of them to score a goal at this point. The only other forward that has not scored a goal on the Kings roster other than Quentin Byfield and Trevor Moore is Andre Lee. Now, I will say that Alex Laferriere's big start to the season has kind of helped to offset what is going on with Trevor Moore, who was a 30-goal scorer a year ago. Now, Trevor did score a goal in the shootout in the loss to Chicago, so I did want to point that out. And I've always wondered, why is it that penalty shot, or not penalty shot, but shootout goals don't count as goals in the stats? Because penalty shot goals do. And it's basically the exact same thing. Only one comes in regulation and one comes after regulation. But they're the exact same thing. But if it's during regulation on a penalty shot, that counts in your stats. But the shootouts don't. I don't know. Seems to be the exact same thing for me. Anyway, for Quentin Byfield, he now has 1 goal in his last 32 games dating back to last season. He has no goals in 12 games this season. He did score a goal in the regular season finale last year. Before that, though, he had a 20-game goalless streak. So again, 1 goal in 32 games for Quentin Byfield. And I think, look, he also did, although Byfield also did not score in 5 playoff games as well, if you want to throw that in there. But if the Kings are going to take it to the next level, I think one of these guys, and maybe both, are going to have to get going. You could argue that it is good news the Kings are doing what they're doing without these 2 key players getting on track offensively at this point. But again, I think it's great that Alex Laferriere is doing well. It's great the Kings have seen some extra production from the defense at this point. But we're still looking and hoping that Quentin Byfield and Trevor Moore can get things going here sooner rather than later. That would definitely help the Kings out without question. Kings are back in action today and also back on the road. We're going to give you a preview of the Kings and Predators next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off to dream vacations, put points towards a flight or a hotel stay with over 500 airlines and over 700,000 hotels and properties. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying your rent now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnhl. Make sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points with your rent payments today. And NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And of course, FanDuel is there for you to bet on our LA Kings, who are underdogs tonight in Nashville. They're getting a goal and a half. The over-under for the game against the Predators is 6.5. You also got Monday Night Football tonight. Chiefs hosting the Buccaneers. Kansas City favored by 9.5 points. The over-under is 45.5 points. Join FanDuel, Browse the latest betting odds of your favorite sports and teams on the Sportsbook app and get in on the action. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. All right, the Kings are back in action on the road this evening in Nashville against the Predators, the first of 3 meetings this season between the two teams. Kings check in with a 6-3-3 record. LA is second in the Pacific Division, 4th in the Western Conference, and 9th in the NHL with 15 points in 12 games. Nashville is one of the bigger disappointments so far in the NHL with a 4-6-1 record after signing big offseason acquisitions like Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. Predators are 7th out of 8 teams in the Central Division, 15th out of 16 teams in the Western Conference, and 28th in the NHL with 9 points in 11 games. The Kings are led by Anze Kopitar, who has 13 points. Alex Laferriere is the leading goal scorer with 8, as we mentioned. Laferriere and defenseman Brandt Clarke also each have 11 points. Predators are led by their leading scorer and goal scorer, Philip Forsberg, with 6 goals and 10 points. Ryan O'Reilly leads Nashville with 6 assists. He also has 9 points on the season. Now, the Kings are playing back-to-back road games. They're playing in Nashville tonight, and then tomorrow they are in Minnesota to take on the Wild. So we don't know, as of the recording of this show, who officially is going to be in net for the LA Kings tonight. Will it be Darcy Kemper or David Riddick? And then the other going tomorrow in Minnesota. Now, I think the general philosophy is with this, when you have back-to-back games, you go with your number 2 goalie against the lesser of the 2 teams. So that would mean, if you follow that philosophy, that David Riddick, the number 2 goalie, would start against the Nashville Predators tonight, and Darcy Kemper would go against the Minnesota Wild tomorrow. However, sometimes stats play into it as far as the history of what these goalies have done against the teams. If you look at the history of Darcy Kemper, he has a career record of 6-2-3 against Nashville and 4-6-1 against Minnesota. For David Riddick, his career record against Nashville is 3-2-1, but he's a perfect 4-0 against Minnesota. So if you want to go by history, David Riddick has had the better career against the Minnesota Wild. How much does that really play into the here and now? Probably not much. So if it was me, I would go with David Riddick against Nashville and Darcy Kemper against Minnesota. We'll see what Jim Hiller decides to do. Nashville expected to start their number 1 goalie, UC Saros, tonight. As far as this matchup by the numbers, Kings check in with the ranked 13th in the NHL in goals per game, 3.25. Nashville is 27th. They're scoring 2.64 goals per game. The Kings are 21st in the NHL in allowing goals per game. So the Kings are scoring 3.25. They're also allowing 3.25 goals per game. Again, that's 21st in the NHL. The Predators are 23rd in the league. They're allowing 3.45 goals per game. Kings power play is ranked 22nd in the NHL at 16.7%. The Predators are 11th in the NHL in the power play, 23.7%. LA's 21st in the league on the penalty kill, 77.1%. The Predators are number 2 in the NHL on the penalty kill, 91.2%. So special teams definitely in favor of the Nashville Predators tonight. Obviously, that's a key going into it. The Kings need to be even or win the special teams battle in this one against Nashville. Now, again, I mentioned it. I have no idea what to expect from the Kings tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if they rolled to a win over Nashville. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost. I just don't have a great read on what this Kings team is at this point. Now, you can't complain with the record or the points. Yes, it could and probably should be better because of those 2 losses to the Sharks and the Blackhawks. But again, overall, you look at the points and the record and the standings, and hard to be upset about the Kings. But it's also, I guess, hard to be satisfied when you consider that they've lost 2 games against, at the time, the 2 worst teams in the NHL. So again, I don't know what to expect from the Kings at this point. There's still a work in progress, to be sure, but we'll have to tune in and find out. Again, the Predators are not a very good team record-wise, but again, the Kings have underperformed against some of the lesser teams in the NHL recently. So we'll see what happens. Kings Predators tonight, 5 p.m. Pacific time. It will be broadcast locally on the FanDuel Sports Network, also nationally on ESPN Plus, and you can listen to the game on the 710 ESPN app. A quick look at the Pacific Division standings show the Vegas Golden Knights still in first place, overall record of 8-3-1, 17 points. They went 2-1 this past week. They beat Calgary and Utah and lost to the Kings. Kings are still in second place right now with that record of 5-3-3, as we mentioned. 15 points for the LA Kings. They went 1-1-1 over the past week, lost to San Jose, beat Vegas, then lost to Chicago. The Vancouver Canucks are your third place team right now, although they're tied with two other teams point-wise. But the Canucks right now have more wins. So they're 5-2-3 is Vancouver. They beat San Jose, lost to Carolina and New Jersey, and the Canucks are coming to Los Angeles on Thursday of this week. Oilers check in at 4-4-1. They also have 13 points. They were 2-1 this week. They beat Nashville and Calgary, lost to Columbus. Flames are 6-5-1. They've also got 13 points, but they were 1-3 over the past week. Lost to Vegas, Utah, and Edmonton, beat New Jersey. Seattle is currently right now in sixth place in the Pacific, 5-7-1 for 11 points. They were 1-3 over the past week. Lost to Toronto, Ottawa, and Boston, beat Montreal. Ducks are in seventh place in the Pacific, 4-5-2 for 10 points. They were 1-1-1 this past week. Lost to Pittsburgh and Chicago and beat the Islanders. And the Sharks in last place in the Pacific, 3-8-2 for 8 points, but they did go 3-1 over the past week. They beat Utah, LA, and Chicago and lost to Vancouver. Got a quick rain report for you, and a good showing by the Ontario Reign, the Kings AHL affiliate this weekend, or I guess Friday, Saturday, Sunday. On Friday, the Reign knocked off the Henderson Silver Knights on the road, 4-1. Goalie Eric Portillo back in net after missing a week with an illness, stopped 34 of 35 shots to get the win. Riley Walsh and Sean Element scored goals in the first period to give Ontario a 2-0 lead. Jacob Doty scored in the second period to make it 3-1, and then Charles Udon capped it with an empty net goal in the third period. And on Saturday, the Reign handled the Silver Knights at home 8-3. Martin Chromiak, Samuel Fogimo, and Jack Studnicka scoring first period goals. Fogimo scored again in the second period, as did Charles Udon. Sean Element scoring as well. Jack Studnicka gets his second of the game, and then Glenn Gaudin scored to round out the scoring. Phoenix Copley was the beneficiary of all the offense. He got the win, allowing 3 goals on 20 shots. So the Reign go 2-0 this past week. They improved to 3-4 on the season. Coming up this week, the Reign will host the Abbotsford Canucks on Wednesday. They'll host Coachella Valley, the Firebirds on Friday, and then play in Coachella Valley on Sunday. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up tomorrow, we will recap the Kings Predators game and preview that night's Minnesota Wild game in Minnesota. Wednesday, we'll recap that game. Thursday, preview the Kings Canucks matchup in LA. And then Friday, we'll review that game and have our weekly Kings fan feedback show. If you want to get an email for that, the email address, as always, is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And you're always welcome to post your thoughts if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section. We appreciate that. Also, if you would like to stay connected with the show on Instagram, we'd appreciate that. Instagram, X, and Twitter, we are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.